Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. Boy, it feels good to be back in the jacket. And today we have maybe my favorite selection of fantasy news ever. That's not true, but let's go ahead and jump on into it. Starting with the fact that Brandon Sanderson officially referred to me as the Disheveled Goblin, which makes it official, right? This is gonna be here forever. I kind of just said it one day, if I remember correctly, and it stuck, but now until the day I die, I am the Disheveled Goblin. But the first real piece of news we're going to cover here today, Rob J. Hayes did it again. You know what your boy's been up to, and I appreciate it. I'm going to keep promoting it. He put out his call in the last episode of Fantasy News for indie authors who are being published in October to send books for him to prop on up, and he's done so. So if you are scoping out the indie scene of fantasy in October and want to pick something up that maybe hasn't hit the mainstream, so you can go to your friends and go, you haven't read this, I know you haven't, I have, I'm better than you. Go ahead and check on it out. It's going to be in the link in the description down below. It's going to be a good time. Oh, and specifically why Brandon Sanderson called me a disheveled goblin? Because I interviewed Mary Robinette Kowal, and that interview was fantastic. So if you haven't watched that already, I recommend you do. But now, jumping into the hardcore fantasy news. Tor has released the official cover for the upcoming Malazan book, Fiends of Nightmaria. And that's pretty intense cover. We got a skull, we got fire, and I'm down. I also like this other cover I found online. They're both nice. Don't worry, I'm reading the last book now, and I will have my series review before too long. And you know what that means, Warhammer fans. After I'm done with Malazan, I promised you I'd check out the Warhammer universe, and I will do so. But now let's go ahead and jump in the next piece of news, which is going to be a bit of one that I'm hesitant to cover here. We had more audition tapes start circulating online that were leaked for the upcoming Amazon Wheel of Time show. And people really love sending me these, and I get it. I like watching them. They're interesting. But it almost feels weird to cover them because it's not actually telling us anything about the show, really. They send heavily modified scripts that don't have any relevance to the show itself in case these kind of leaks happen. And the actors aren't necessarily embodying the characters super well yet because they don't even know the real character they're auditioning for. They've just been given a vague description that could even be misleading, again, in case a leak like this happens. So if you're interested in watching these, you can easily find them. They've been posted to every Wheel of Time website. There's been specifically one around Egwene that's been like possibly leaked that's catching fire. I also just find it like almost a little bit like an invasion of privacy because this actor probably didn't intend for this to go like out there for the full public to see, but it is what it is, and I already know most of you watched these, so if you'd like to check them out, link as always right down there. So we've gotten the news that there is going to be a The Boys spin-off show, specifically taking place in like a superhero college. This has reached the level where even Seth Rogen has tweeted about it, and at first I kind of had a knee-jerk reaction of like, that's been done a lot, and I'm tired. Oh wait, this is The Boys, so it's going to be a parody of what we've seen done a lot, which is what they do. And with the Seven, the main The Boys focal point of the seasons we've seen so far, being very Justice League inspired, them going for a superhero college has a obvious very other direction to go in. And I like the idea of them going like, okay, this is the more DC angle, now we'll have a more Marvel one as well. So I'm down, and I don't love season 2 as much as season 1 so far. Spoiler alert for my review of the whole season that'll be dropping later once it's done. But I don't know, like I actually think this is gonna be pretty solid. I had a very reaction at first of like that, but then I just warmed up to it the more I thought about it. But I could be wrong and it could be awful, or it could be the greatest show ever made. I don't know, I'm not psychic. I would love to be psychic though, because then I could know if this next fantasy news rumor is going to be true or not. Though I have a pretty strong suspicion it's gonna be true. Because you had multiple retailers now put up a listing for a Mass Effect Original Trilogy remastering. Two things. One, please, for the love of God, do not make this a remastering and like what we've seen for the recent Prince of Persia remastering. Because that was like going from GameCube to PlayStation 3 first gen. No. If you're gonna remaster it, bring it up to current date. And I would absolutely play the crap out of the first 2 Mass Effect games being remastered for the latest generation standards. Like, no question I would do that. I still replay those games every year, so duh. And it's always funny to me like when companies won't confirm that these things are true, even though now multiple retailers have put it up, like, oh yeah, they would totally do that on accident within a reasonable time frame of each other by mistake. Or hey, it could be not true. This is still technically a fantasy news rumor. We also had Sanderson posting to his YouTube channel going over the possibilities of Cosmere adaptations, whether movie, show, or video game. And no, there were no big announcements, but he did kind of go in depth on his thoughts for why he wants Mistborn a film versus Stormlight Archive maybe a show. And so if you're interested in that and hearing on the other titles that he said he's actually considering being animated. All right, I have to cover this because it's been sent to me 1,000 times, but get ready for some fantasy news drama, specifically regarding Netflix and their adaptation that is in the works of the Three-Body Problem, due to the fact that the author made some problematic comments. No, this isn't the kind of problematic comments we've seen recently a lot. This is much more political, specifically tied to what is happening in China with the Muslim population. In regards to the fact that there are people being sent to re-education camps, the author said, "Would you rather that they be hacking away at bodies at train stations and schools and terrorist attacks? If anything, the government is helping their economy and trying to lift them out of poverty. If you were to loosen up the country a bit, the consequences would be terrifying." Oh boy. In response to this, several senators have come forth and asked for Netflix not to do this adaptation and raise this author up to another level of fame, which having a big adaptation will undoubtedly do. That's just how this works. How many of you knew Martin's name before Game of Thrones, or the Witcher author's name? Well, probably, okay, my audience is fantasy nerds, but you know what I mean. The mainstream people. Netflix did put out a response, but it's very not addressing the problem as you would probably expect. I do want to add a slight bit of clarification that Netflix's statement genuinely had nothing to do with any of the concerns, where it's like, you're raising up this person who's coming out pro-internment camps where forced sterilization is happening, and their entire response was essentially, "Oh, but no, don't worry, that's just his opinions, it's unrelated to the books," which, that's... what? And they haven't necessarily had a reputation recently of caring about what they put on their platform in terms of the problematic nature of it. So this is going to be interesting to watch develop, and I will be keeping an eye on it. Jesus Christ. I'm going to gleefully jump away from that dumpster fire of fantasy news, though, to talk about the joyous news that Rose, Leslie, and Kit Harington have announced their first ever pregnancy. And oh, that is just so nice. We are officially getting a Game of Thrones baby, and I'm sure that child will never have to deal with that being said about him constantly in middle school and high school. Good luck, kid. But these two are expecting their first child, and it's adorable. It made me smile. Yay. Now in some Witcher-related news, flashback to when Witcher was in every fantasy news for like a solid 5 minutes, they are having to recast the character of Eskel, as Theo Ersten Rasmussen, I tried my best there to pronounce it, has said he can no longer be in the show, even though he has shot several scenes due to conflicts with the rescheduling around COVID. And I predict we're going to see this happening a lot as productions ramp back up. Many actors who made promises to be in other productions down the road and were involved in stuff earlier on now have to either drop out or break contract. It's going to be difficult. But the new actor bringing Eskel to life is going to be Basil Eden Bez, who I'll put up stuff for what he's been in on screen now. It's going to be a rough few months for the entertainment industry getting these gears grinding again and have these productions up and running. Happily, though, we have seen Neil Gaiman confirm that in 3 weeks, we will have the Sandman adaptation begin filming. Quite exciting. This is going to be one of those adaptations that I have no idea how they're going to bring this to life. Sandman is unorthodox in its presentation and style, so what are they going to do to present it properly in this format? Probably some pretty crazy stuff, and that's what I'm always looking forward to. And I didn't realize how much Netflix news there's going to be in this episode until just now getting into this again, but Netflix also released their trailer for the upcoming Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy. Okay, it's kind of that cheap computer-generated graphics Netflix has been doing for a lot of these things. We saw it in the Ghost for the Shell series they're working on as well. I don't necessarily know how I feel about this. Transformers is just a franchise I've never been that into. The animation's not impressing me. But I've seen many comments that it's like, it's a show for kids, why do you care about the animation? Animation for shows I liked growing up were pretty stylized, or at least were like clearly well done and had passion put into them. This just seems like, I don't know, not lazy, that's giving a lot of discredit to animators who work very hard, I'm sure. But having just like one look of an animation style you're pumping out for a lot of your content, where it's clearly just like the easiest route, the path of least resistance, and not necessarily what fits best for the vibe of the show, just doesn't vibe with me spectacularly. Maybe I'm crazy for caring about this so much. I'm not sure, but hey, for the Transformers fans, you're getting this, and I'm sure a lot of you are excited. And again, in Netflix news, this is going to be a bit of a quickie. We also had Resident Evil Infinite Darkness confirmed, and again, this is another franchise I've just not been that interested in, but if you're a Resident Evil fan, how do you feel this one? Well, in the comments down below. I have no idea the current state of the Resident Evil franchise and its fans. Is this something that's like, okay, it's been milked to death, or is this still a lot of milk in that cow? How would I'm very regretting that. And coming swinging back into the fantasy realm once again, M. Night Shyamalan has posted a picture of himself on set filming Old, which is going to be a loose, I guess, adaptation of a graphic novel called Sandcastle. Obviously, M. Night Shyamalan being attached to any adaptation at this point is going to bring people who are fans of him to the front and people who hate him to the front. He has kind of a mixed reception in the community, and I always want him to live up to the potential we know is there. M. Night Shyamalan has made great films, and I want to see that again. So let's hope we get the Shyamalan who gave us Unbreakable, Split, Sixth Sense, and not The Last Airbender or Glass. And I have not read Sandcastle. For those of you out there who have, do you think he's a good fit if you've watched a good amount of Shyamalan movies? Does he have a vision or a style you think, if he's doing his best, could vibe with the material? It's actually something I really want to know. I'm always curious of the fan bases being like, oh yeah, that's a creative lens, if done right, could realize this properly or no. Like it'd be strange if J.J. Abrams was announced to do I don't know, another Game of Thrones thing. It's like, no, that vision does not match that tone. And in the final piece of fantasy news we're going to be talking about here today, it has been confirmed that Avatar 2, directed by James Cameron, of course, is officially done filming. It's 100% complete. That has come from James Cameron himself. Amazingly, I care. That sounds weird, but for the longest time as I've heard about Avatar, I've been like, who cares? No one cares about this anymore. And I still don't in many ways. I don't care about the characters, the world, the story, the lore. None of that's been on my radar at all. I've basically forgotten the first movie. But what suddenly occurred to me and got me interested in Avatar is the fact that James Cameron has to know he can't just rely on this being a visually stunning experience to entice audiences as much as he once did, right? He's aware that we're constantly being blown away by Thanos level CGI in Marvel movies. He's aware that he can't just be look at this spectacle and vistas, oh my god, to make people satisfied, because we've been spoiled. We now only talk about CGI when it's done poorly, really. The standard is it's breathtaking and blowing you away. So the question is, what are they going to do here? How are they going to appeal to an audience? They could just go for this super uber visually striking, movie, and I think they could have some solid returns on that for a sequel, not the number they're planning. So are they actually going to try and step up the story and characters to be more memorable and engaging? That's the question. And so I'm definitely at least curious enough to be excited for a trailer. And I guess from there I will decide whether or not I'm super down to get into the Avatar verse or not. But let me know what you think in the comments down below about this or any story I covered here today. If you'd like to see other stories covered, join the Discord server and post them there so I can go ahead and see what my audience wants me to talk about. And of course, like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And patrons, I am almost done with my next short story. I'm going to go through and do one last draft and revision, so you should be getting that pretty soon. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record my special shout out to my latest high-tier Patreons, Chris Brown, Mustafa Elkerby, and Stephen Pridemore. I had to change the end loadout for patrons just because the sheer number of y'all. I hope you understand.